not believe in any conspiracy theories? I understand not all of them, not most of them, but you don't believe in any conspiracy theories? You just think the government's just batting 1,000 and telling us the whole truth?
This is a perfect political joke.
That's a strong stance to take.
To understand why it's perfect, first I have to talk about what makes political humor different from other kinds of jokes. And before I can discuss that, I have to explain what a joke even is. You know what Mark Twain said about dissecting jokes and frogs? Yeah, this is going to be one of those videos. To clarify, I'm using the term joke extremely broadly, to mean any kind of humorous gag, from physical comedy to wordplay,
What's the motto?
Nothing. What's the matter with you?
to even anti-humor, where the joke is that the joke isn't funny.
Hey, I'm asking you. What's the name of the guy in first base?
No, what is on... Oh, I see what your problem is. You're confused by their names because they all sound like questions.
I don't know.
Third base. Well, I'll explain it to you.
The thing to understand is that every joke involves at least two parts, a premise and a punchline. The premise is kind of the rules of the joke. It's often unstated, just left to our collective understanding of the world. For instance, saps with dignity ought not be hit with pies.
Free comedy tip, Slick. The pie gag's only funny when the saps got dignity. Like that guy. Hey, Hal, pie job for Lord Autumnbottom there.
Oh dear.
Other times, the premise is explicitly stated. We call this a setup.
I know one joke. There's a mollusk, see, and he walks up to a seat. Well, he doesn't walk up, he swims up. Well, actually, the mollusk isn't moving.
We use the phrase sense of humor because it seems instantaneous, as though you would just see or hear a joke and it's funny.
What do you call a three-humped camel?
I don't know.
But there's actually a cognitive process going on in the mind of the audience.
Pregnant.
That's why it takes some people longer than others to get the joke. Now, of course, there's often more to a joke than just these two parts. There's context, timing, delivery, etc., etc.
And there is a fine line between tragedy and comedy. Slipping on a banana skin is very painful.
You can read a lot more about this in Dan O'Shannon's very serious book about comedy, What Are You Laughing At? But for the purposes of this video about political humor, the important thing to know is that the audience has to understand the premise.
A lot of comedians have great jokes and they don't like, why isn't this working? It's not working because the audience does not understand the premise.
That's right.
So I just I'm going to make sure, if I set this premise up right, this joke will always work.
When we say we don't get a joke, usually what we mean is we don't understand or agree with the premise.
Oh, a Gary Larson calendar. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it.
So, every joke has an element of truth in it, or at least what the writer considers to be true.
Dude, oh my God, can we talk about, the political and economic state of the world right now?
We'll get to that, but first, we have to talk about jokes that are
offensive.
These come in two broad categories: offensive jokes and offensive jokes. Most offensive jokes hinge on saying something that the audience generally knows is inappropriate.
Warner Brothers is producing a new movie in which Superman is black. In this version, black Superman's kryptonite is an honest day's work.
If you think Colin Jost shouldn't say things like that, he agrees with you. The unstated premise is, this is an offensive thing to say. Which is not to say that it's just a joke, is a get-out-of-offense-free card. A joke that's appropriate in a nightclub may not be appropriate in a church.
Here's the thing again, you can joke about anything, but not with anyone. My audience is not the same as your audience.
In addition to the joke itself, there are elements outside of the comedian's control, like the audience's mood, taste, how drunk they are, their preconceived notions of the world, and so on. Again, Dan O'Shannon covers this in great detail in his book, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Because comedy happens in the mind of the audience, certain topics can derail their train of thought, thus ruining the humor. For example, when my daughter was learning to walk, I used to joke that every day was like the first 10 minutes of a Final Destination movie. I could see all the things that could possibly kill her. To understand the joke, you have to know that A, kids do stupid things, and B, the basic concept of an early 2000s horror franchise. It is a dark joke if you think about it. The death of a child is the worst thing that can happen to a parent. So if someone's kid had died in a plane crash, or a roller coaster derailment, or a tragic but all too common logging truck decoupling, they wouldn't find it funny. And they'd be right. Comedy is subjective in the sense that it happens inside the mind of the audience. All of that being said, it is possible for a joke to actually be offensive. That is, when the premise offends. Who gets to decide which premises are offensive? Well, if you believe in subjective morality, you're going to have a hard time.
See, they're morals. They're code. It's a bad joke.
But since this isn't a channel about ethics and moral philosophy, I'll set that question aside and just appeal to broad consensus. Let's consider Fantasia. You might think I'm referring to the cavalcade of stereotypes during the Nutcracker Suite. From the Russian flowers, to the Persian fish, to the Asian mushrooms. No, I'm talking about something way worse. It's an animated blackface centaur, which is not a phrase I ever expected to say.
Yet here we are.
This caricature was so offensive, Disney removed her from all Fantasia re-releases since 1969. Contrast this with Tropic Thunder, which also famously features a character in blackface.
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
One of these is offensive and one isn't. Why?
My character justified it, so when it comes, I don't say justified, but he called it out.
The answer is the premises. In Tropic Thunder, the premise is that celebrity actors are so out of touch, Kirk Lazarus doesn't realize that what he's doing is inappropriate and offensive.
Why you still doing this Chicken George shit? I have no idea.
Neither do I.
It's beyond me.
It's beyond me.
You confused.
I am a little confused.
I know.
But are we cool?
Not really.
Which means the comedy depends on the audience agreeing that blackface is inappropriate and offensive.
What do you mean, you people?
What do you mean, you people?
The point of the Pickaninny Centaur is to exaggerate and mock certain racial characteristics. So again, saying it's just a joke is meaningless. They're both jokes. The difference between them is the underlying assumptions of the premises. Now that I've gotten child death and racism out of the way, let's talk about politics.
When you vote, you are exercising political authority. You're using force.
When the writer-comedian assumes a position on any number of contentious issues,
Oh, there you go, bringing class into it again.
That's what it's all about.
half of the audience won't find the joke funny. And again, they're not wrong.
Everybody is defining the line for themselves.
No, society defines a line.
You see what you're saying now is you're saying society has decided. But America is clearly divided in that half of society has gone like, no, Dave Chappelle, we love what you said. We're sick of wokeness. We're sick of people being told what to say. We're sick of not knowing how to use the right pronoun. You're right, Dave Chappelle. So then if half of society is saying Dave Chappelle is right and half of society is saying that he's wrong, then that means there is no line. It means society is seeing the line from two different sides. And so that's why I say you cannot say, did he cross the line? Because which side are you looking at the line from defines whether or not he crossed it.
The principal reason why political humor is difficult comes down to the fact that we don't all agree on the premises. Is taxation theft?
Beautiful, lovely taxes.
Are billionaires just hoarding their money? The answers depend on your point of view, which will in turn affect the sorts of jokes that you can tell. Even when using the same basic joke structure, the punchlines will be different. Matt Walsh and Sacha Baron Cohen have essentially done the same bit.
Is there a black person around here? I would hug them and apologize to them all day long for what happened.
There's a black person right here. Does he not exist?
I'm sorry, I just didn't look that direction.
Trying to blend in with and push their political opponents into saying something ridiculous. Almost no one finds both of these scenes funny. This divide is clearly illustrated when you look up subreddits or hashtags like the left can't meme or the right can't meme. You'll find that the examples used to demonstrate just how unfunny your side is are often the memes you find the most hilarious. The reason why you laugh is the same reason why they don't. The premise. I'll pause here for a second to note that as I've been talking about politics as a one-dimensional scale, some people have been angrily typing in the comments,
"It's not binary."
And that's true, but even if you expand to a political compass or some other sort of multi-dimensional conception of politics, it doesn't affect the underlying concept here, which is that you have to agree with the premise. Although sitting outside of the two-party system does make it easier to mock both.
Can everybody just give me a quote that I can maliciously edit out of context?
Let's go back to segregated schools.
Punch Donald Trump in the face.
I would like to take a shot. I can hit him very fast.
Bring out the sandblasters.
Thank you.
So how can political comedy reach out to the largest possible audience? There are a few approaches.
Do you think I'm funny? Do I make you laugh? Do you think I'm a comedian, son?
Back in the 90s, if you flipped over to Comedy Central on a lazy Saturday afternoon, you'd often find them playing films that had been box office bombs, and thus were cheap to license. They ranged from cult classics to movies that tanked because they just weren't very good. Somewhere in the middle fell PCU. Due to YouTube's overzealous copyright gremlins protecting a movie that isn't even streaming anywhere, some of the following clips will be swapped out with the Harold Lloyd classic, The Freshman, which is 100 years old and thus in the public domain. Directed by Hart Bochner, Ellis from Die Hard. It's a satire of political correctness at universities.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
Although released in 1994, writers Adam Leff and Zach Penn based the script on their time at Wesleyan in the late 1980s, yet you can imagine many of these jokes in a sketch today.
I'm a black man. There's no justice for me here in America. I should be at the front of the line.
Yeah, well, I'm gay and subject to ridicule and discrimination wherever I go.
Women are oppressed throughout the world. Give it a rest.
PCU suffers from two issues that often occur when comedies attempt to poke fun at, quote, both sides, unquote. Writers tend to portray the characters on their side as well-meaning but ineffectual, and their political opponents as genuinely evil. While PCU teases various shades of left-wing groups, from hippies to wominists, the primary student villain is David Spade, a young Republican character that they actually named Rand.
The school used to be a bastion of rich, white elitism. Now they're the homosexuals on the football team. Whining minorities run the student government, and you can't even coerce a woman into having sex without being brought up on charges.
Ironically, when attempting to mock both sides, political comedy can wind up with the same issue as before, alienating half the audience. Even in a group writing situation, like a TV writer's room, it's difficult to come up with jokes whose premise you disagree with.
You can't say that. Jeb Bush is a friend of mine.
There was a show on Comedy Central called The Nightly Show. One of my friends worked on it as a writer, and they tried to have different ideological viewpoints and political viewpoints in the writer's room, and apparently the whole thing was a massive debacle because writers, these are all comedy writers, mind you, some of the comedy writers would say, I refuse to work on those jokes. They're against my code of ethics. And other ones would just, instead of a comedy meeting, it would turn into a political debate for 10 minutes.
For more about the politics of writers' rooms, head over to the Too Much Film School Substack, where you'll find more details, as well as other in-depth articles that don't fit easily into the video essay format. Also, paid subscribers get video essays early and uncensored by YouTube.
Would you like to know more?
The other issue of both sides comedy is exemplified by the character played by Jeremy Piven, supposedly a college senior.
You serious?
He's portrayed as apolitical, and much of the film's non-ideological, college-based humor comes from him.
What is this? You're gonna wear this to the show. You're gonna wear the shirt of the band you're gonna go see. Don't be that guy.
Piven's character dismisses the concerns of both sides in favor of some supposedly underlying, unrelated issue.
Now, it's true, the majority of students today are so cravenly PC they wouldn't know a good time if it was sitting on their face. But there is one thing that will always unite us and them. They're young. Look out that window. That's not a protest. That is a cry for help.
This stance might seem superficially unifying, but equivocating can come across as just plain nihilism.
This generation is more socially active on both sides of the aisle, so this time I engaged.
I mean, don't you agree?
Yes, we need to allow others a chance to speak for once.
Well, yes, but even by saying allow, you're implying that you have all the power.
But I thought you were saying I did have the power.
Are you twisting my words?
See, this generation doesn't even understand half the shit that they're saying. They aren't more ethical than us. They just want to be perceived as such. And who could blame them?
We need to use our privilege as much as we possibly can to protect people. How can you not see that?
We need to use our privilege to protect people as much as we can. How can I not see that?
Because if we don't, who will?
Because if we don't, who will?
Exactly. What we need is a revolution.
Exactly. What we need is a revolution. Simply regurgitating back to them exactly what they're saying to each other in their ridiculous echo chambers is all they want.
It's less both sides and more like neither side.
You don't have what it takes to be a citizen.
So, what does Ron Funkus do differently? First, notice what Funkus doesn't say.
You don't believe in any conspiracy theory?
He doesn't point to a particular conspiracy. Rather, he allows the audience to fill in their own. It doesn't matter if you think Bush is behind or Obama is or Trump is or Biden is because his most Americans thought anyway. Thinking the government is inept or untrustworthy is a nearly unanimous belief among Americans. You'll even find it in children's shows.
Now there's something you don't see every day, Edgar.
What's that, Chauncey?
A squirrel in Congress.
Oh, I don't know, Chauncey. Just a matter of time.
How's that?
They've had so many nuts in Congress, a squirrel was bound to show up someday.
Weird Al is about as mainstream as comedy gets, and he generally avoids politics.
When you do political humor, generally you have to take a side, which alienates half of your fan base immediately. Right. And I'd prefer to keep all the fans that I've got.
One of his few parodies that even approaches politics is Party in the CIA, which plays on the public's general distrust of that agency. But Funkus did something more subtly complex than just aiming for consensus. He starts with a punchline.
Then how do you not believe in any conspiracy theories?
With an implied premise that believing in conspiracies is absurd. Then Funkus flips these around.
But you don't believe in any conspiracy theory? You just think the government's just batting 1,000 and telling us the whole truth?
No one thinks that, and we get to laugh at our own assumptions. He stakes out a position that we laugh at, then convinces us to laugh with him. He points to the contradiction and actually changes our perspective in the course of just a few lines. Very few political jokes land for everyone on both sides of the aisle, and offer a chance to change our mind. It's a short but perfect joke. I don't mean to imply that political comedy has to appeal to both sides. It's fine to have a point of view. If you want to preach to the choir, there's certainly a market for it.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part too.
But making both sides laugh while also making an actual point, that is what makes political comedy difficult. As a final aside, I'd like to point out to anyone typing inflammatory accusations in the comments, I haven't actually said anything about my own personal political views.
This silence be token. Nay, this silence was not silence at all, but most eloquent denial.
Not so. Not so, Master Secretary. The maxim is qui tacet consentire. The maxim of the law is silence gives consent. If therefore you wish to construe what my silence betokened, you must construe that I consented, not that I denied.
So whatever your political inclinations are, please, just assume I agree with you.
I agree with that. I agree with that, too. I didn't hear it, but I just know I agree.
And because we agree on so much, you should hit the like button and share this video with all of our like-minded friends. And don't forget to subscribe so you can see more videos that perfectly align with your worldview.
Okay, what's your major?
Particle physics.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Ooh, motion of helium atoms in an excited state. Watch out, it's a scorcher. Next.
Sanskrit.
Sanskrit. You're majoring in a 5,000-year-old dead language.
Yeah.
Okay. Ooh. Latin, it's the best I can do. Next.
Phys ed.
Phys ed. Okay, you're out of my room. Seriously, get out.